Good morning, America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. There's a lot of news out there, a lot to cover, but we're going to focus on identity theft today. It's a big issue out there. The IRS is making some changes to help fight it. We get questions on identity theft on a regular basis. The question is, um, how comfortable do people feel in addressing this, but how can you protect yourself in advance? So there are ways to do that, and pretty much essentially lock down your IRS account so people can't go in, steal your refunds, mess up your tax account. It is a huge headache, and the IRS is very overwhelmed and behind in handling these cases, roughly 2 years. So stay tuned. We're going to have a lot of good information and focus on identity theft and how to prevent it and how to fix it once it happens, because it affects way too many people. It's a scourge on our country. Welcome back, everybody. We've got a busy day today, and so we're just going to jump right into it. First article here that we're going to cover is a lot of economic news today. And let me just make sure this is the right one. So again, I want to focus on and still highlight, I'm just not going to spend a lot of time on this, but talking about what's going on in Venezuela. So there are high hopes that the military and the police were not going to support Maduro yesterday as riots broke out, mass protests throughout Venezuela. Really scary things, even gang members saying that they don't want violence, but if the police and the military don't step down, they will start assassinating them. Scary. Um, but again, it's right now the Maduro government is doubling down on this and going out now that they've had time to kind of regroup and put things together. They're fighting the people back. So again, people are tired of this government. They want change. They want their families to return to Venezuela and have a Venezuela that actually works for the people. Um, People are through petrol bombs at law enforcement. Not a good thing. But again, when you have a dictator running your country, what are you supposed to do? And they turn around, tear gas fired. So again, this is kind of scary. What's going on? Things are protesters are trying to march on the palace and on the government officials, but being turned back. So and then flights from Venezuela, from Panama, and the Dominican Republic were suspended, so protesters can't return to Venezuela to protest, or Venezuelans can't return. Um, and this is very true. Maduro makes this comment. We've seen this movie before. So, pledging that security forces will keep the peace, crush the protests, etc. We've been following all of the acts of violence promoted by the extreme right. Every time they have an election, it's rigged, or allegedly rigged in a big way. Um, and so, yeah, he's had protests. He's stomped on protests before. This is nothing new for them. They've cut off diplomatic missions and ties to other Latin American countries that have questioned the elections, even leftist governments like Peru. Um, and they're announcing investigations into members of the opposition party on accusations of election fraud. So if they don't go along with the election, they will investigate them and jail them like they've already investigated and prosecuted, the leaders of the opposition. So again, using lawfare to go against political opponents, that's what banana republics do. And some would claim we see that here. So again, it's Javier Milei from Argentina said that not even Maduro believes the electoral scam he is celebrating. So it's just that's the problem when you lose your rights, freedom of the press, you lose any kind of controls and legitimate fact check or way to fact check or actually audit and verify that election is valid. So when you have, in most European countries, they have very tight controls. Most countries in the world have tight controls on who votes. You get a ink stained thumb or something showing that I voted. You have to have ID. The idea that you don't need an ID to vote is everywhere requires an ID except for the United States. And apparently, Venezuela, they just count whatever they want to count. So again, it leads to huge instability, and we're going to talk about some of the instability affecting our government a few articles down the road. So, moving on, Stellantis. Again, this is a amalgamation of two different part of Chrysler and I forget the other one. PST, I think it was. It was two different automakers combined to make Stellantis. They're huge on EVs. So and this is a CNBC article, and they're trying to reduce its U.S. employee headcount by offering voluntary buyouts. If not enough people, this is targeting VPs, higher end employees as well. If not enough people don't take it, they will do forcible layoffs, which it's never voluntary to be laid off. Again, they have disappointing first half results. A lot of automakers are struggling, especially those that are focused on EV. So again, it was a merger between Fiat Chrysler and France's PSA group. PST, I think, is their soccer team. So they're trying to increase profits and double revenue, but again, the opposite has happened. So where if you work with them for them, it's going to hit a lot of people. Jumping again to the housing market. So again, this article came out from the Epic Times. Currently, $1 million starter home is now the norm in 237 American cities, which blows your mind. But when they look at cities, to be fair, they're looking at individual cities. They're not looking at metro areas like the Bay Area or Los Angeles. So when you look at individual cities within those areas, we get much higher numbers than you would think. I think the number is a little distorted as a result. But still, when you go in, $1 million home is just how you enter the market. It just becomes insane, which is why most people can't afford to live in those areas and have to commute in. So typical starter home, which is identified as properties in the lowest third of home values, is worth about $1 million. Where are these concentrated though? California, New York, New Jersey, some areas of Florida, and Massachusetts. So again, huge metro areas where, of course, it's there are individual cities that are very expensive to live in. So the New York metro area led the way with 48 cities. And then you take the San Francisco metro area, 44 cities, Los Angeles, 35 cities, and then San Jose, 15 cities. So if you look at these metro areas, that's 50, 100, easily well over half of these cities. And then the rest of them are sprinkled throughout the U.S. So again, these are probably richer areas. But again, drives home the point that more and more areas, they just become astronomically unaffordable. So people have to commute in or move, which is one of the things that's happening. So going with this article is another article talking about, again, this is Biden pushing the rent control scheme. It's not going to happen. There's no way this would get through Congress. And this is what we're seeing more and more is people are like, hey, look what I'm proposing. Look what I'm saying I'm going to do, but I'm never going to do. And there's plenty of people on both sides of the political aisle that do that. Interesting enough, when they do have control of Congress, they don't pass all this stuff because they know how damaging it would be. But they definitely talk the talk, but don't walk the walk. I mean, that's politics 101. And so this really breaks down how damaging rent control can be. And one of the reasons that President Joe Biden and also Kamala Harris are talking this up is that mortgage rates have doubled what they used to be. Mortgage payments have roughly doubled since 2020. So it's twice as expensive monthly to afford a home. And income has not doubled since 2020. Rents are up by more than 30%. So if you look at the price to purchase new homes, it's that more difficult to make it affordable. For rents are only up by 30%. Mortgage payments have roughly doubled. So again, putting the squeeze on supply. If it's that much more expensive to afford homes or afford properties that can be turned into rentals, you're going to have fewer out there, which is why we have the demand issue being so much greater. And a lot of it is due to immigration. When you let 15 to 20 million people into the country over 4 years, that's going to have a huge impact on the housing market. And that's a separate issue there. Nobody really talks about that. So the Biden administration is blaming greedflation when the cost of housing, the cost of everything connected to housing is going up. So he's proposing capping things at 5% a year and other controls as well. This is nothing new. Rent control has been tried. It's been pushed. New York, they did it in the 70s. The supply of available apartments fell. Homelessness went up because working families ended up on the street. So again, it's something that's tragic. Again, it might be a good idea, but the results are usually very destructive. New construction of apartment buildings nearly shut down. So 1980s, a lot of cities went the other way, relaxed price controls. There's still rent-controlled apartments in New York because you have the powerful and the connected that have it. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people and they're in a rent-controlled apartment paying $1,500 in New York City. Like, we're never moving. This is something we've had in our family forever. There's no reason. It makes absolutely no sense to move because you move outside of that, your rent would double or at least double, if not go up more than 100%. But even Democratic economists are saying this is a horrible idea. It's been tried, it's been true, it's just ridiculous. So Jason Furman, again, chairman of the Economic Council under Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, said that rent control has been about as disgraced an economic policy in the toolkit. The idea we'd be reviving and expanding it will ultimately make our housing supply problems worse, not better. Now, the truth of the matter is they're not serious about this. And again, again, it just goes through this, and we're gonna wrap this up when we come back. We're hitting a break period, but I don't think the Biden administration is serious about this. Nothing has been introduced, nothing been talked about. It's just show and tell for their voting base. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Just want to, I was kind of rushing through this article at the end. Just want to highlight, this conservatives, Republicans do the same thing. They talk a good game about something, being tough on the economy. When push comes to shove, especially this last year, they rolled over time and time again on voting for more spending, more pork, and again, it's the vast majority of Republicans do the same thing here. So again, this is not just focused on that. So again, I'm not going to get more into the details, but talking about and pushing the idea of rent control, turning rentals. What is that? What do you think renters are doing or landlords are doing? Do you think people are investing in more housing or pulling back? So that's the thing. Talk is dangerous. And so when politicians do talk up this stuff, even if they don't plan to do it at all, it still hurts the housing market and makes things worse. So again, that's the problem is governments try to I'll do a quick fix, try to treat things, even if it hasn't worked, to show the people, hey, I'm doing something, even though it's completely wrong-headed. And we're going to get to more of that. So this next article really drives home, and so this is something I haven't touched on yet. It's been in the news a little bit the last couple of days, and President Biden came out with some reforms for the Supreme Court. This is classic. Look what I'm talking about. Let's attack the Supreme Court. Let's denigrate it because I don't like what's coming out of it. I don't like what they're doing. But this stuff has almost zero chance of going anywhere. So President Biden has talked about this, but they haven't talked to the legislators like they would normally do if they were actually serious about doing something. Not a single bill has been penned, brought up, suggested. And to actually do most of these reforms would require constitutional amendments, which is very difficult to do and probably would not go anywhere. So this article is again from the Epic Times. And it's funny how things are kind of going the other way. You can claim that they shouldn't, but like on overturning Roe v. Wade, if Congress wants to speak on that matter, speak. If they want to pass that law, do it, but they return it to the states. There's no federal law banning or not. And so I actually like that the court is rolling back its power. They're stepping back and saying, hey, we're returning power to the states. We're stepping back. Changing Chevron is a huge step in that direction. And this is where we had ridiculous things happening where the EPA was trying to regulate man-made ponds. Someone, where people would have a leak on their property, a pipe burst or something that created a pond, and then they would go to fix it. And then the EPA would come in and it's like, you can't get rid of that pond. There's birds on it now. Like it's a leaky pipe. That's all it is. And they would term that navigable water. So taking federal authority, stretching it way beyond the original intent and trying to get away with that. So I think in many ways, I think it's great that the Supreme Court is eliminates the power of the federal government. But not everybody is happy about that. So some of the reforms that they're talking about, again, the constitutional amendment, attacking that presidents enjoy immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts. So part of this, why are we doing this? Because look what they're doing in Venezuela now. Prosecuting political opponents. The court might not have held this way if we didn't have all the lawfare going on against President Trump over the last 3-4 years. That's not how healthy democracies run. The left has accused pretty much every Republican president of criminal acts from the beginning. Going back to Reagan, I had a professor in college who thought Reagan was a criminal. And you can argue, yes, but do we want to prosecute every single president we have? I would argue no, that's not healthy for a democracy. So another one is to set up term them out after 18 years of active service for justices. So Article 3 is pretty clear that they get lifetime tenure, and the tenure to get around that, they're going to try to say, oh, well, we'll do 18 years of active service, and then they can offer suggestions, but no longer participate in day-to-day operation of the court. Label them senior justices, and then shove them off for the actual workings of the court, replace them. If this was passed, the Democrats would be able to replace 2 justices, conservative justices, very quickly. Again, this isn't going anywhere. This is more red meat for the far left. It's not going anywhere, and so they want to pass binding enforceable conduct and ethical rules on the Supreme Court. They already have their own rules, and Congress doesn't follow the rules that the Supreme Court has already done on their own. So again, we have a very, very corrupt Congress pointing the finger at the Supreme Court, saying you can't do A, B, C, and D, which is they all do it. And they pick and choose when they want to whine and complain about it. Again, they have plenty of liberal justices doing the same thing as conservative justices. Nobody's cared up until now, but now that they're attacking the Supreme Court right and left, it's been a problem. So again, just going through this, it's likelihood of any of this passing is slim to none. And one of the reasons that I'm sharing this is Kamala Harris from Blaze Media has grabbed that torch and is carrying this idea of attacking the Supreme Court, talking up the hate or the severe criticism of the court to the point that Justice Roberts has actually come out and corrected Schumer. And again, we've had assassination attempts on Supreme Court justices. We've had people protesting at their homes, targeting their family members. It's gotten really bad. And this is not promoting civility. This is not helping our government move forward. So, interesting enough, and this is from CNBC, going the other way, you have Josh Shapiro, just want to touch on him real quick, backing aggressive corporate tax cuts in Pennsylvania. And he's considered a potential VP candidate. So this is ironic that he is, and he's more of a moderate in Democrat circles, and he's a staunch defender of Israel. He's Jewish. And his position on corporate taxes could really upset a lot of Democrats, but as a VP, he might moderate the ticket, but again, doesn't have any real power. So I think this would be interesting that he's pushing for aggressive tax cuts to help his state of Pennsylvania compete with other states, and he says, I'm competitive as hell. That's why I've been so aggressively working to cut business taxes and help his state. Good for him. I think that's the governors, their job is to represent their state, bring business to their state, help improve the economy of their states. So I think it's interesting that he's pushing for corporate tax to help his state, but nationally the Democrat ticket is pushing to drastically increase the corporate tax rate and make us less competitive with the world. So it kind of goes into some of the other individuals, but I think this is interesting. We should have more of a debate of issues going back and forth. Now, Chuck Schumer, this has been talked about on the news, and this is from Axios, which is a left-leaning site. I think they did a really good job with this article, though. And he talks about show votes for the far left. Here we're gonna make some show votes, and the Republicans do this as well. I really want to throw this out there. This is their season, I guess. The Democrats have been doing this a lot, and the Republicans in the House do the same thing. They do show votes that force people to vote for or against something to make the other side look bad, but they don't have any real hope of passing it. They want to extend an expanded version of the child tax credit, which is a Democrat priority. However, this is something that vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance has been pushing. This goes exactly to directly to helping families and giving a tax benefit to people that have children, families that have children, to the disadvantage of adults without children. And he's been attacked endlessly on the left for that statement. However, the Democrats are pushing exactly that. Generally, I think there's broad bipartisan support. However, there's all kinds of other things attached to it. And now that they're pushing it, they're doing it for a show vote, expecting to be voted down. They know there's broad Republican opposition. And rather working with them to get something passed for the American people, politics is getting in the way on both sides. So hopefully after the election, this will get done. I do support this. And so it gets more into the politics of it, but hopefully they finally do this. This is something they've been waiting on for years now. It's really since 2022. It passed the House, or no, it expired at the end of 2022, and they've been trying to get this addressed. So moving on to the next thing, when we talk about taxes, one of the big things that isn't talked about, and this is the problem, where there's all kinds of hidden taxes. The cost of doing business with in the United States is huge. It's one of the reasons a lot of companies go overseas. So a new report just came out that the Biden administration has added $2.1 trillion in just the cost of dealing with the administration. So an extra $2.1 trillion costs to do business in the United States. So this is dealing with all the new federal regulations that have come out. And there's been 97 rules with costs of $100 million or more, which is why it goes up to 2.1 trillion. So the economic cost of additional red tape, additional rules. When President Trump was first elected in 2016, that's one of the first things he announced. They were going to go on and cut the red tape, get rid of regulations on small businesses, on business in general. And they're saying that new regulations on small businesses were partially responsible for and this article comes from the Competitive Enterprise Institute, which is, I'm not familiar with that institute, but again, checking on the costs of doing business with the government. So 3 years have averaged 807 rules annually, compared with 694 for Obama, 701 for Trump, respectively. Doesn't mention that when they went in and got rid of a lot of regulations under Trump, it actually really, it did help. It did help businesses. It's one of the reasons the economy took off. And so they finalized 3,818 rules through their administration in 2023. So it's the second lowest since 1976, but the number of pages are more. So again, that's roughly 8% of the total gross domestic product of the entire United States. You can't underestimate the cost of this. So I do have other articles I want to share. Running out of time, so we're going to skip ahead to our topic of the day. And this is identity theft. So some quick articles here. IRS warns about ongoing tax-based identity fraud. So this is a little bit older article. Again, this is something that's happening and it's increasing more and more. And again, they use outright theft through hacking IRS systems, bank systems, credit cards, and scams. A lot of people are scammed out of their money. Or scammed out of their personal information, and then they go. Credit cards are open in their names. Tax returns are filed names. All kinds of things happen that causes taxpayers all kinds of grief. So we're going to repeat this or see this repeated quite a bit. Look for any indication that someone has filed a tax return that wasn't you, that an online account was created or accessed without your knowledge, getting unexpected correspondence from the IRS. It's never, usually not expected, but a transcript that you didn't order, authentication letter. It looks like someone's doing something on your account that you didn't know about. So records showing income from an employer whom the taxpayer has never worked for. This is a common thing, and it happens when people use a false social security. They're using someone else's social security number to work, but they don't get taxed for it. You do. Sometimes there's withholdings on those tax returns, but if you file your return and you don't include that information that you didn't get, you don't know about, it can cause a lot of problems. If tax returns are rejected on the basis tax returns have already been filed, or if you're missing information, it is important that you report this. Report it quickly. So jumping to the next article, this is same identity theft coming through in a new and novel way. So this is a new identity theft scam starting out, intending to make you believe you were owed a refund. So this is something that's mailed out. It typically comes in a cardboard envelope from a delivery service. And it's in relation to your unclaimed refund, trying to get people to jump on this. And they'll have bogus contact information and a phone number, so it's not the IRS information. And again, it's just trying to get your personal information. So when the IRS reaches out to you, when they do send letters, they never say, send us back information. They might ask for documentation, etc. But that should be on a case that you're already actively working. If you have any questions about this, contact a professional before responding. I can look at IRS letters and we review them for free. We don't charge. Or suspected scam letters, we review them for free as a public service out there to help people avoid scams. And again, if you have older family members, people that might be susceptible to something like this, we'll review their letters too. It's simple, and it's a very valuable service that we provide to the community. So, and it tries to trick people to email the IRS. The IRS, they almost never use email. So again, if they're trying to tell you to email something to them or phone and call in and give very detailed personal information, it's a scam. So whenever you're calling them, make sure you're calling legitimate IRS numbers. And how do you do that? You go to irs.gov, or like I said, you know, there's plenty of times I've looked at letters and scams, and if the person wasn't sure, I was just call the number right there. And when I'm calling in, I can tell very quickly if it's a scam or not. They'll use odd punctuation, mixture of fonts, but more and more they're making it look exactly like an IRS letter. So they have the IRS heading, they'll have the IRS symbol on there. Most scammers or people just trying to get people to call won't use that because that's a clear violation of the law. But people that are actively trying to scam people will do that just because they're already breaking the law and trying to scam people, and they know it. Don't just send a clear phone picture of your driver's license. So here's a common language here. Ironically, the IRS is trying to verify and move more and more stuff online. So if you have a tax professional that you hire, there are times that, yes, they will request a copy of your driver's license. But they won't ask for is your bank routing information. The only time to ask for this is if you're setting up a direct debit installment agreement, which you can do online. Bank account type, we do have to ask for that. So again, the IRS is demanding more and more information, but then it gets tricky when you have scammers asking for the same information. The IRS will never directly ask you for your bank routing information. They'll ask you to fill out a form and send it in, or a voided check when if you're dealing directly with the revenue officer. But this is somebody that you should be. If you're at all suspicious about it, you should talk to a tax professional. And the reason I say talk to a tax professional is to weed out the scams. And again, it can cost people hundreds of thousands of dollars and do a lot of damage to someone's finances, retirement, get tax liens filed against them. It is a huge problem. So their hook is you need this to get your refunds after filing. You have to do this to get your refunds. That's how they're getting people to fall for these scams. They must be given to a filing agent. There's no such thing as a filing agent at the IRS. Will help you get your unclaimed property claim. So again, they're getting more and more sophisticated, and I'm up against the break, so we're going to come right back. Welcome back, everybody. So just want to finish up with this article. Be aware. Be wary. If you have questions, call us 520-485-7371 or reach out to us. And the IRS has shared some information, which is why I'm making identity theft really the important part here. Getting a PIN, if you suspect that you had identity theft, first of all, you have to report it, and it's taking the IRS 2 years on average to address these cases when people have had their identity stolen. So if you're concerned, go get a PIN number beforehand. You don't have to do it online. You can request it without setting up an online account, but it is a lot easier to do with an IRS online account. Once you do, your account will be locked against anybody else coming and try to access it. So I have mentioned this before. I'm coming back to it because it's such an important issue. It hurts so many people. And they are making it easier, trying to make they just announced another way for taxpayers to access their account through your IRS.gov account. So when you get a PIN, it's called an IP PIN, it locks out fraudsters. It can lock you out if you lose your PIN too. So again, but it's a very strong method. So even if someone has your, they steal a lot of your identity. If you have a PIN in place on your tax account, only you can access it. You have to have that PIN, but it's very important that you keep it safe, that you keep it in a safe area. Don't share it. You should only share it with your trusted tax provider. Make sure you're using someone that's trustworthy. There are tax preparers that are shady that will use and abuse people's information and have been prosecuted for it. Never store this on a computer system. Computers can be hacked. So even if your tax professional systems are hacked, which is what they're targeting tax professionals, your account will still be safe if you have that PIN and just don't have it on your computer. The IRS will never call, email, or text to request IP PIN. That's a huge sign of a scam. Do not give that out. It's only used when you file your tax returns or accessing your account. That's it. And again, this is one of the reasons if tax professionals who do have their data stolen can urge people to go get an IP PIN, do it before. Like I said, you don't have to go online to do it, but it can really help protect you, protect your information, and we see so many people go through the headache of dealing with identity theft. It really is a huge pain. So some of the things talking about PINs, it's a 6-digit number, should only be known by you, the taxpayer, and the IRS, and your tax professional if you're using a tax professional. And this is completely voluntary, even though it's strongly encouraged. I encourage it. There's so much out there, but you just have to make sure you don't lose your PIN because, again, that becomes a huge pain. So you need to keep it somewhere safe, keep it somewhere where you'll remember it, and you maybe, if you have a friend or somewhere, maybe keep it somewhere instead of just in case people move, things get lost. You keep it in your documents that you know that you're going to preserve over time. So it's only entered in an electronic tax return when prompted, or on a paper return next to this signature line. So if you have a PIN in place and someone tries to file a tax return, it will get rejected. So it's valid for 1 calendar year. A new IP PIN is generated each year. You have to verify their identities to get a PIN. And I think the IP PIN. This is interesting. You could get a PIN beforehand, and people were using this. But I think the IP PIN might just be online. But you can still get a PIN number. So, again, never share their number with anybody but the IRS and a trusted tax preparation provider. The IRS will never call, email, or text to request a PIN number. And tax professionals cannot obtain an IP PIN on behalf of their clients. They have to get their own IP PIN, which I think is helpful. That way, again, there are attorneys, there are other professionals out there that do use and abuse clients. There's plenty of attorneys that have been prosecuted, not just for this, but for other things as well. So protect yourself. And how to get one? So you have to get an IP PIN, you have to go through irs.gov and set up an ID.me account. You can request a PIN by filing this form, 15227, application for an IP PIN, if you qualify. So your income has to be less than $79,000 or $158,000 for individuals. And you'll get a call from the IRS to validate their identity. It's not easy, but they will mail you a PIN once you've done that. So you could also schedule an appointment to go to a taxpayer assistance center to go and sit down with someone and go over your information to get that validated. Again, you have to bring picture ID, and other documents to prove your identity. So if you have any issues, so if you think you have been a victim of fraud, identity theft, anything like that, what's the first thing you should do? Report the incident. To you can go to your local IRS stakeholder liaison. So these are local contacts throughout the United States. And then, so just reach out to them. You need to report it. You should report it to the FBI and to your local police. Is there much that they're going to be able to do about it? No. But by reporting it, that helps add to the data. They helps clue the police and the FBI onto who is actually committing the majority of these. And as the reports pile up, that enables them to get more information, see commonalities here, and go after these. So again, your case should be taken care of, but unless you report it, nothing's going to happen, and it can continue and get worse. So they recommend find state contact information for your appropriate state tax agency. Again, so your local, if you pull up a state and you type in California DOR, their actual tax regulatory body is the Franchise Tax Board. But if you type in DOR, which stands for Department of Revenue, throughout the country, most states have a Department of Revenue, a Department of Taxation, something like that. But if you type in DOR, it will almost always come up with the correct tax agency. So again, there's other ways to go about this and make sure that you are protected. So spending a lot of time on this because it is important. And then lastly here, identity theft central. So again, this is if you suspect that you've had any kind of ID theft related to your taxes, they can affect your social security number, they can affect all kinds of things, and it can cause so many problems down the road. So don't ignore it. Don't bury your head in the sand. And here's a taxpayer guide to identity theft. It walks through, you'll know the signs of identity theft. A lot of this we've talked about. You get a suspicious tax return. If you can't e-file your return because of duplicate social security number, get a tax transcript in the mail that you didn't request, an IRS notice that an online account has been created in your name, or your existing online account has been accessed and you didn't do it. If you owe additional tax or refund offset that you had no idea about, or that you received wages or income from an employer you didn't work for. I see this fairly common. It's a very common thing to see. Or if you get a notice that you've had an EIN number assigned to you for a business that you weren't aware of. So again, it goes through the steps. What actions should you take? Tax-related identity theft, file form 14039, identity theft affidavit. And this is all here. All these links will be posted to our show. There's fraudulent returns, you can request a copy of fraudulent returns. And if people are claiming dependents, there are ways to contest that as well. If there's some kind of data breaches, again, you can file that to stop anything. And then here are different ways to protect your PIN numbers. Getting a PIN, again, I'm going to hammer on this, highly recommended. This will protect you in case something happens, prevent a lot of damage to your tax account, and again, highly recommended for, given what's going on with the scams hitting and affecting U.S. taxpayers. So one last thing I'm going to share, and this is interesting. I came across this article, and this is kind of like a little bit of an infomercial, someone else's infomercial. Phil Liberatore, IRS expert in CPA, advises identity theft victims to hire a tax professional. I get this question all the time. I just got this question. Should I hire a tax professional? The question is, if you go to this, and I'm gonna jump backwards a little bit. What can a tax professional do for you that you can't do for yourself? They can help you fill out and file the form. You can do it online, or you can actually fill it out in person. So here's a link to actually go to and actually fill out the form. And no, this is another online version of it. So, but that's something most people can do for yourself. You just go through and report it. They can't get a PIN for you. They can follow up with it, but this is, again, usually what they do is they just file the form and then just let it go. So again, be wary of people pushing to, solve the sun, moon, and stars, do everything for you. Average processing time for these has gone up to 675 days as of April 12, 2024, so almost 2 years. And he advocates hiring a tax expert. You should have a tax professional filing your returns if you've gotten burned and someone's stealing your identity. I do agree with that. So like a CPA or tax preparer. Do you need a tax attorney or enrolled agent to do that for you and fill out the form for you? It can provide you some peace of mind, but a lot of it can be very expensive, cost prohibitive. So we normally don't do this for people, mainly because it's something they can do on their own. But there's some people that see every single little opportunity to charge people as an opportunity to make money. And I'm not trying to denigrate Mr. Liberatore. I'm sure there's plenty of people he's done this for. So I think the real question is, are you comfortable filling out this form? Like I said, you can go online. It'll walk you through how to do that. And I'm just jumping back to this other article. Or you can pay someone to do it, but they have to get all the information from you to do it, and literally line by line have you get the information for you. They fill out the form and submit it, but then it's just a waiting game. One of the big questions that I get is like, look, I submitted this form. It's been 6 months. It's been a year. It's going to be about 2 years. They will get to it eventually, or they should, but don't expect it to be quick. Don't expect it to be very timely. It's just the way it is now, that it's going to take a long time to get this addressed. So the moral of the day is protect yourself, protect your relatives, talk to them about some of the things that the IRS does send. The IRS will almost never call you unless it's a revenue officer and they have to identify themselves as such. And even then, when a revenue officer calls, you probably should get an attorney anyway, or a tax attorney or tax firm representing you. Those are very complicated cases and usually deal with high dollar amounts. But again, if you have any questions, you're not sure, someone in your family has gotten a scary letter or some scary calls, take down their information. And usually the scammers, if you're taking down their information and you said, look, I'm going to check with a tax attorney first, they'll get off the line. They don't want to be reviewed. They don't want to be checked. So ask for their IRS ID number if they're claiming to be if they're claiming to work for the IRS. They have an IRS identification number, and they should give you their full name and way to contact them. And it should be, if it's not a main IRS number, be very wary. Again, you can reach out to us at guardiantaxlaw.com. Protect yourself, protect your family members. Get that PIN. I highly recommend it, so you can avoid these issues and make this tax situation easier for you. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.